Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. In today's video, I'm putting together my Project Life spread for the week of July 18th through July 24th, 2025, and I'm working with products from my stash. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so this is the week of July 18th through 24, which is actually a Friday through a Thursday. And I did that week a little off because the following weekend is a travel spread. So I wanted to just do that weekend in the spread. This week ended up being a lot of like random little things, like nothing was really going on. And I kind of just didn't take that many photos. So I ended up actually adjusting it because I had originally thought this was going to be the 19th through the 24th, but I just didn't have that many photos. And I think I ended up actually printing a decent amount of photos, but let's see, what do we have here? So what stories I have. So this is a screen that my grandparents had, and my friend was storing it for me from back when, before I moved across the country. And she finally shipped it to me, which was, I mean, I say finally, but it was on me, not her. So that was exciting. I was working on a lot of projects this week. And of course I have a lot of pumpkin photos. So let's see. I think maybe I'll put these two together because that's the box for that. And I can put maybe this one here, maybe this one here. Just trying to break it out. So I had this card stuck in here. I don't have a kit to work with this week, so I'm just gonna work from my stash. And I had this one stuck in here with the thought that I would use it, but my title card is 4x6, and honestly, I don't love this card. I've been using these cards from Coco Daisy this year in my album and doing one spread per month using those kits. I'm not using the July kit in July because I actually used it in May because the July kit had a bunch of Portland themed things and I went to Portland in May. So I obviously had to use it for that week. So that's why I have an extra spread in July with no kit. So what I'm gonna do instead is use this as an opportunity to use up some of my cards from my stash. I also don't have a lot of specific stories that happened during this week. So I'm gonna pull over, this is my taken out. So I have my package, so I got this. We had sushi night, and let's see, just a lot of crafting that I did. I've been working on my story albums, and let's see, planning a vacation for next summer, just watching TV and crafting, work, obviously, yoga, a lot of work. A CLE that I presented that I guess is a bigger story a little bit. I got my hair done. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So not really a ton happened. I have a few little stories that I want to include, but I think I want to do some like directed journaling or types things from my stash of journaling cards. So I'm going to pull over some cards and pick out what I want to include here, and I'll pop back on. Okay, I'm gonna start with the 4x6 cards. I have a category that's called specific title. So these are ones that are 4x6 cards that have a large title, which I can use here for my weekly title, but they are more specific. So they have to actually fit some sort of story. And I actually really like this one, so I might just use that one. This one is also very great. So those are two options. And let me see what else I have in here. Okay, so I pulled three options out here, and I'm just gonna put these here, move down to the side. So I like all of these because this one is great because one of the themes this week was a lot of crafting and creating. This one is great just in general. And this wasn't really a super hard time, but I was just very tired. So I feel like that also works. And that one's just a pretty card. But they are specific themes, so I want to always use these before my general themed ones. Okay, so I went over to my stash again and I found this pad I have, and I think that this would be really good for just some stories, and honestly I like it with all of those. So I think I might use this one for my journaling about this week, like just specific stories. Then I went over and I pulled some of my specific categories. So this one is called, let me just fill in / check off. So that means these are cards that have specific things for you to fill in. And I'm going to see if any of these are things I want to use during this week. Okay, so I looked at a few cards. I think this one will fit for this week. I can just check that box and make that be a filler card. I like that it's white background because there's so many photos right here. And then here, I think I could use this to kind of tell the story about just like all of the things I'm kind of working on or whatever. Just, you know, kind of a fun little twist on all I need is, you know, crafting time, trash TV, like just the things that I was doing this week, and then something fun for that. So I think I like that. I was considering this one, and I really like these currently typed cards because I can fill in, actually, you know what, well, because I was thinking this one might be good because I have watching. I definitely have stuff I was watching. I wasn't really listening to anything. Learning, so I was teaching. I presented a CLE this week, which if you don't, I'm an attorney, so CLEs are continuing legal education. And so maybe I could journal about that in the learning. This is a possibility. Okay, now I'm gonna go see what else I have. Okay, so I'm gonna look through my specific themed journaling cards to see if anything fits a story for this week. So these are very specific themes that are harder to kind of find something that fits with them. So like I could use these two, saying yes and saying no together. Okay, so I pulled over a few different things and I'm just gonna kind of go through and look at the colors. So I pulled this one as an option, and I see these cards over here are more blues, and then this is pink, and I have some pink over here. So I could bring this one and have this be the only kind of pop of pink. Or I was thinking this one is also really fun, and then I would move the pink card over to this side to balance it. Or I still have this one. Now, honestly, I think I'm liking this one the best for this spread. And so then I have this to tell the story of my general stories from this week. And then these are some specific stories. And then I can shift this, and this can be the story of that, which can be a little bit of a longer story. And then this one, I was thinking I could use this for some additional journaling, but I think I don't need it. I don't love how these ones look like this. Let's see, maybe. I don't want all the cats together though. I think that's gonna work. I might wanna put something like on top of this photo. Let's see what I can find. Okay, so this is a photo I printed of Pumpkin, my cat, looking at himself in the mirror, which I thought was hilarious because he doesn't normally do that. He doesn't normally notice the cat in the mirror, but he did for some reason on this day. So I snapped a photo of it, but there's a lot of like extra space that's unnecessary here. And I printed this 4x6 because I had these 4x6 pockets to fill. So I pulled over, these are like celebrate and fun ones, and I'm thinking maybe one of these could be something I can cut out for that one. Because there's all this extra space, I'm thinking I might want something on top of there. Also because I have all of these photos together, so maybe something right here. None of these seem to work though. Moving on to my, let's see, these are filler ones rather than journal cards. This is the Happy Good Times theme. So like this, that works really well. I like that one a lot. That's super cute. I'm thinking I like this one. I could cut this out and put it on here. I'm just not entirely sure how I'm gonna cut it, but maybe I'll punch it in like a circle. And then I really like this one. I thought this would be super cute somewhere. I'm not sure where though. I think I'll put that one back in my stash, but just remember how fun it is. And I'm gonna put these ones back in my stash. Okay, so I'm gonna start putting this one together. I'm going to probably do some of my journaling in the beginning to kind of make sure that I have spaces for all the stories I want to tell and not too many spaces. And then I'm going to figure out kind of what I want to do to embellish and maybe add a little bit more onto these photos and make this a little bit of fun and use up more of my stash. So I'm going to put you guys in voiceover as I get the rest of this one put together. Okay, so I started with my journaling and I'm going to start with this currently card. And a lot of times when I'm doing journaling and it's broken out into sections like this, or it's a longer card, I like adding stamped titles because I think it breaks up the journaling a little bit. It fills some of the space when I don't necessarily have a ton to write, and I just like the way it looks. So I have a lot of fun with that, and I do it on a couple of the cards in this spread. This one I'm using this super tiny mini alpha stamp set, and I picked this up at a local shop, so I'm not sure that I could link it. I know I get questions about it all the time, but it's just a very tiny wooden stamp set. I like alpha stamps so much, and I have a ton of them. I generally use the clear stamps, but I do have a couple of the small wooden sets, and they're really great as an easy go-to, and this is one of my favorites. I also have a medium-sized one that I got on Amazon, and I can link that in the description box below, and a larger one that I also got on Amazon. On this card, I'm loosely sticking to the categories. I kind of switched a couple of them because they didn't exactly fit my week, but that's okay. I made it work for me, and that's totally fine. For these prompt-based journaling cards, sometimes you have to kind of be a little bit flexible with matching the prompts so that it will work for your stories. Next, I'm moving on to this meaningful card. And this one is a little bit of a longer story. I told a little bit of it at the beginning of this video, so I don't need to go into it in too much more detail, but I'm really happy that I used this meaningful prompt to tell this story because this screen is now meaningful to me in two ways. One is it's from my grandparents, and it's one of the few things that I inherited from them directly that they gave me that I still have. They gave me a lot of little knickknacks and things that I don't have because at the time that they passed away, I was still in college and moving around a lot and didn't have like a permanent base to keep stuff. And then I moved by mail across the country in 2010 to New York City. And New York City is very expensive and you have a very, very small space. And I had to move by mail because it was very far. I was moving from Arizona, so I couldn't bring a lot of stuff. My friend Jill, who's the same age as me, and we've been friends since elementary school, offered to keep this screen for me. And she has carried it around with her religiously for the past 15 years. And we finally connected on it and it just hasn't come up recently. And I'm in a very different place now. I own a house. I have space for it. I have money to pay to ship this thing across the country. So I did, and she shipped it to me. And so now it's meaningful in two ways, both because it's for my grandparents and two, because one of my greatest, oldest friends held on to it for me for 15 years, even though she moved a lot in that time frame. Anyways, that was a quick tangent. So what I did for that So Darn Funny card, I punched it out using a 2.5-inch circle punch and created an embellishment with it to cover up some of that kind of dead space on that photo of Pumpkin. And I put it on that corner where it's up against two other photos, so you don't have so much photo touching and you have a little bit of embellishment or card there in between. Moving on to this note to self card. I really like this pad. I feel like Ali Edwards used to do these pads for a while there. It has kind of stopped. On one hand, having them is a huge stash issue because they do have so many pages in them and it's impossible to kind of use them up. I've never actually used one up or really made that much of a dent in it, but I do really like this card, and I think it would be fun to pick one of them as a jumping off point, as a continuation through every week. You could do it in every single weekly spread, have the same card, and use that as a story prompt. I don't necessarily want to do that because I do work with kits, and it would always have to be in there with my kit, but I do like that idea and maybe would incorporate it in a future time if I ever reformat how I do this project. On this card here, I pulled over this stamp set. This is from Carrie Bradford's studio, and I stamped out Cozy Crafty Hobbies because that was this prompt card says all I need is this, and that was a big theme around here recently and during this week, so I wanted to kind of journal about that. And then I put, and maybe this, more time, because I always want more free time. I feel like a lot of crafters could always use more time, or moms or women or just anyone in general could use more time, especially if you have a full-time job and hobbies and children and house and all of those things that take up so much of your time. So I thought that that was a fun way to fill in a card and tell a little bit about what life looks like right now. This note to self card, I'm going back and forth to it as I add stories because I want to elaborate on different stories here than I have on my other journaling cards. I'm using my Zig dot marker to make bullet points. That is the platinum color. I have that linked in the description box below if you're interested. I use these mostly in my journal and planner, but I do use them in Project Life a lot to make bullet point lists. I pulled over some labels from my stash, and I'm adding one on this title card to add my dates. I pulled this pink one from Kelly Perky because I wanted to bring in that pink some more from the note to self card. I really liked the pink with the other colors of the products that I've chosen, but most of the products are blues and greens and cooler colors, so I wanted to bring in those pops of this kind of muted pink. I'm thinking a little bit about how I can do that, and what I end up doing is adding some word phrase strips. But first I'm going to add onto this card. So I checked the box for indoorsy, which is actually not really true. I'm not very indoorsy. Actually, I don't know. I'm a little bit of both. So I do really like the outdoors, but we haven't spent a ton of time outdoors this summer because it has been a very miserable summer in upstate New York. We've had a lot of rain and a lot of super hot, humid days. So it's really been either like this heat wave of really hot humidity that is just disgusting to be out in, or pouring rain. So we have spent a lot of time inside. So I wanted to kind of tell that story on that card. And then I'm added a label just to add a little bit of context. I'm adding a label on this photo here just to also add some context to this photo. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I didn't have a lot of photos this week, and this was one I had taken for my Instagram. A lot of times when I don't have a lot of photos, I will go through the photos I've taken for Instagram and print some to put in my Project Life. Typically, it's not ones that are just of specific projects because I don't know, I just don't document them in that way. But sometimes I have some other photos on my Instagram, like this one of my albums, and I thought that that would be fun to add in here and fill an extra pocket, but I wanted to add a little bit of context as well. I also wanted to use the label because I'd already used 2, and I always like to use 3, so that you have the same technique. 3 spots on the spread kind of ties it together. I wanted to add more of this dusty pink color, so I found this word phrase strip sheet in my stash of this dusty pink. It's not exactly the same pink as the note to self, but I like that it's more of a muted pink. I think it goes really well with that note to self card and the pink label that I found on the end that I put on the title card. And I'm just adding a few of these on a few of the photos, and then I added one on that so darn funny card on the photo of Pumpkin looking in the mirror. And I'm not going to add embellishments on all of my photos. I felt like that would be a little bit excessive because the spread seems pretty busy. I feel like I usually like to add a few photos or have a few photos that have nothing on them, but especially when I'm working from my stash, because you tend to have less repetition in the spread because the cards don't coordinate as closely as if you're working with a kit. I pulled over these chipboard stars from my stash from Allie Edwards and added those on a few of the different cards on the embellishments or on the word phrase strips and the labels and just like all over the place. And those were, I believe, from an earlier December daily release. They were neutral colors, so of course they were going to go really well with my spread and just add a little bit of dimension to the spread because everything else I had used was completely flat. At this point, I'm just going to slip everything in the pocket. I have to trim a few things down, and sometimes I don't have to trim as much, but for whatever reason this week I kind of struggled to get everything in the pocket, so I'm just trimming things down. And as I do this, this is kind of my last check of whether or not I like the placement of everything. I like the design. I want to remove anything around or add an extra embellishment or remove an embellishment and just kind of take my time to make a final check and make sure I like how everything balances. On the bottom right there, or the bottom left corner of the right side spread, I have a photo of my Gatsby canvas, which was a project I did. The company Gatsby Canvas reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do one of these craft projects. It's a scratch off and it looks like a lot of fun. So I said yes. And I was working on that during this week and I took photos for my Instagram from that as well. So that was another Instagram photo. But I also liked documenting kind of the projects I'm working on in here. This spread has a lot of those photos of projects, including that one right there of all those story kits and the one of my albums. But I also liked that Gatsby canvas on the right-hand side there because it's dark and it balances out the dark of the title card that I use, that Endlessly Creating card, which has that black background. And I think that that helped make this spread balanced a little bit more. So I just wanted to point that out because sometimes you need to look at or think about those colors a little bit in determining whether or not a spread goes together. Here's a look at that completed spread. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.